Boker. Today's daf yomi is Kesubos 109. Says the daf yomi, Haposeak mos lechosno. So somebody says he makes a promise, and he's going to he's going to give money to his son-in-law. The whole discussion, how exactly he made this promise. But I guess the easiest way for me to understand is he made the promise, but now he doesn't have the money anymore. Upasha lo asarego. He didn't pay the money, whatever reason. He didn't pay the money. So he wasn't able to pay the money after this. So, meaning to say, so the Ran explains in the name of the Ravid that we're talking about. He made the agreement that he's going to give the money while they were making the shidduch, but not during the time of the betrothal. Because if it was during the time of the betrothal, the chassan could force him to do it. So that's the Ran's explanation. Another way to do it is that maybe just he promised him he doesn't have the money. Pasha lo asarego, and now he says, "Sorry, you're on your own. Basically, I can't give it to you." So the Tanakama says on top of 109a, Deishev Achatal bin Rosha. He can force the father to pay by making her just sit as an aguna, by saying, "You stay until your hair goes white. You made this promise to me. I'm not releasing your daughter from the betrothal. So she's betrothed to me, and we're not fully getting married, so I don't have to support her even." So Teisha Vashatal bin Rosha. Amon Omer Yechola Shataomer. Amon says she can say, "Iwani pasakti la'atzmi." Amon could say that she can claim, if I made the promise myself. Teisha Vashatal bin Rosha. Amon says she could say, "Listen, if I made the promise myself, okay, then I'll sit until my hair grows white. But it was my father made this promise. What could I do? O Kenos, either marry me or patur, or release me." Amar Rabbi Gamliel, so Rabbi Gamliel indeed says, "Ro anias divrei Amon." I see the opinion of Amon. I agree with Amon. So the Gemara says, okay, let's see what's going on. Masnisa deloki aitana. Our Mishnah is not like the following Tana, because there's a different version of how this story went down. The Tanya, we have a Brisa. According to this version, Anmon and the Chachamim are not arguing about a case where the father made the promise to the son-in-law, and then the father didn't pay. Then she could say, "Abba pasak alai." My father made this psak, mani yachol asod. My father made this promise. What can I do? What are they arguing about? Al shapaski hi al atzma. They're making the argument where she made the promise herself. That under those circumstances, some say, well, then since she made the promise, she stays until her hair grows white. And Amon says, Amon says she can say, "Listen, I thought my father would pay for me." Why? Why did she think her father would pay for me? Because my father was there and he was quiet. But now that my father is not giving the money, so Amon says, she could say, "I thought my father would pay for me." But if the father actually promised, everyone says that then she has no leverage and she stays there until if her father actually promised it, then she could say, everybody agrees that she could say, "Release me." So Amar Rabbi Gamliel says, I agree with Amon, who says that even if she made the argument, she made the promise herself, she could say, "I thought my father would pay for it on my behalf." Tana, so we learned about this, about when do we say this idea? When is this price? So referring to by an adult girl, or by a minor kofin. We force. So who do we force? Well, how do we understand the statement? Kofin laman. Who do we force? If you want to say we're forcing the father, if if we're forcing the father, then it should have said the opposite. It should have said, it should say that if she had made the claim as an adult, then we would force the father. Excuse me, but since she made it as a minor, we wouldn't force her. So therefore, well, read Rashi. If we want to force the father, it's more logical to say the opposite. Because when she's an adult, tonight, then it's a valid tonight. And so therefore, why do we say this by a minor we force? It should say by an adult we would force the father. We want to release her by as an adult. So the Gemara says, so therefore, what does it mean when we say kofin? That if she did it as an adult, if she did it as a minor, we forced the husband to give her a get because she did it without agency. She was minor, she wasn't able to really make such an agreement. So then we forced her to give a get. So anyway, we saw that Rabbi Gamliel said, I agree with Admon. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar Mishmei de Chizkiah. So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar said in the name of Chizkiah, Kol Makom Shama Rabbi Gamliel Ro Ani Estivri Admon. Wherever Rabbi Gamliel taught this sentence, I agree with the words of Admon. Halacha kamoso. The law is like Rabbi Gamliel and Admon. Amar Rava Rav Nachman Afil beBraisa. Even when this is said about our brisa here, because this was said about a brisa, we were just quoting the brisa. Rabbi Gamliel said this in a brisa. According to the brisa, she's the one who made the agreement, not the father. And according to Amon, we still force the father to pay. So even the brisa, Mishnah. He said, I didn't say, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar, I didn't say that he said this only in a Mishnah. But Kol Makom, I said wherever he said it. Kol Makom Shamar Rabbi Gamliel Kamrina, wherever it was taught. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rava, Bar Yirmiyah. So now remember we said that there were two things that our chapter started off with Hanan saying when he argued with the rabbis, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, I see the words of Hanan. Now we're going to see 7 things that Admon taught, and 3 times Rabbi Gamliel says, Roani is Divrei Admon. So 4 if you count the bright. Okay, fine. Very nice. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabba. No, it's relevant, of course. Yeah. So Amar Rabbi Zera. No. It's a good point. So Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabba Bar Yirmiyah, Beis Dvarim Shamar Hanan, Halacha Kayotzebo. In the 2 things that Hanan said, Halacha Kayotzebo. The law is like Kayotzebo. What does that mean? I'll read the Rashi. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai Kayotzebo. The Kayotzebo de Hanan, which is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And Kayotzebo de Admon is Rabbi Gamliel. So Rashi says when it means Kayotzebo, it means like the one who said like him. So the law is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai when he says like Hanan, and like Rabbi Gamliel when he says like Admon. That's what he says. V'shivat dvarim shamar Admon ein halacha kamoso. So he says, I skipped one. He says, Shnei dvarim shamar Hanan halacha kayotzebo, shivat dvarim shamar Admon ein halacha kayotzebo. The 2 things that Hanan said, the halacha is like the kayotzebo, i.e. like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai agrees with him. And the 7 things, that Admon said, the law is not like the kayotzebo. My kamar. So the Gemara says, we don't understand what this statement that Rabbi Zera is saying in the name of Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, what's he saying? It's hard for us to decipher. If you want to say what he's saying is Shnei Dvarim Shamar Hanan halacha kamoso, that the 2 things that Hanan taught, the law is like him, v'kayotzebo, and also like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, v'shivat dvarim shamar Admon ein halacha kamoso, and the 7 things that Admon said the law is not like him, v'lo kayotzebo, not like Rabbi Gamliel. But didn't we see that Chizkiah taught that wherever he says the law is like, wherever Rabbi Gamliel says the law is like Admon, the law is like him. So it can't be that the law is not like Admon. This is what I mean. Shnei dvarim shamar Hanan, the 2 things that Hanan said, halacha kamoso, v'kayotzebo. 2 things that Hanan said the law is like him and like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. V'shivat dvarim shamar Admon ein halacha kayotzebo. But the 7 things that Admon taught, the law is not like kayotzebo. The 7 things that Admon said, the law is not like Rabbi Gamliel. Hakamoso halacha bekulo. So you mean to say it's like him in all of them? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar Shmei Chizkiah Kol Makom Shem Rabbi Gamliel Rowan is Devi Almon halacha kamoso. Rabbi Gamliel says the law is like him in 3 cases. So what it means is, which means say Amar in Lo Amar Lo, that the law is like Rabbi Gamliel when he says the law is like Almon, and it's not like him when he doesn't say it. So the Gemara says, okay, so that we know. The 2 things, the 2 things that Hanan says the law is like him, and it's also like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Shir dvarim shamar Admon yesh men shalach kamoso v'kayotzibo v'yesh men shenalach kamoso el kayotzibo. The 7 things that Admon taught, there are some that the law is like him and like Rabbi Gamliel, and there are some things that the law is not like him, but they're like Rabbi Gamliel. In all those cases, Rabbi Gamliel said, I agree with Admon, i.e. those 3 cases from our Mishnayos that we've seen, the law is like Admon. Other cases, it's not like Admon. So this is one of the cases where the law is like Admon. Both the Mishnah and the Brisa. Okay, so now we're up to the bottom Mishnah on the bottom of 109a. Ha'or al-Asada. So the way Rashi explains this case is that there are 3 people involved. There's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Levi sells a field to Shimon, and Reuven is one of 2 witnesses on that field, on the sale. But now Reuven comes along and claims that field that Levi sold to Shimon, which I signed off on it as a valid sale, it's actually my field. He makes a claim, and he has supporting evidence, obviously.
Rabbi, before you go into the case, but I thought when we were talking about the other cases where Rabban Gamliel said, I agree with Admon, that there were cases that was not the halacha. But now we're saying that should be the halacha.
No, that's what Rabbi Gamliel is saying. That's what the Gemara said. In those 3 cases, Rabbi Gamliel says the law is like Admon, the halacha is like Admon.
No, I thought, that's what I'm confused about, because I thought in one of those, or at least in one of those cases, we said the halacha was not like Admon, but now we're going back and saying it is like Admon.
Where did we say it was not like Admon?
When we were talking yesterday, whatever, with one of the cases, whatever, I thought.
There was an opinion that said it was.
The Gemara maybe was suggesting that the law wasn't like him, but the Gemara's conclusion that the law is like him.
Okay.
So, if somebody makes a claim against a field, but he paid. But he's the one who signed on that field that it was sold to this person with a witness. Admon said it doesn't matter that he signed on the field. He could say, he could say, I signed on it because I wanted to make a claim against Shimon because Levi was too hard for me to make the claim. So I was to my advantage to have the field transfer from Levi to Shimon. The Chachamim say, no, once you sign on the field that Levi sold his field to Shimon, you lost your rights. Also, similar acher, but if he now a second case is, let's say he made similar acher. So what's the case here? Rashi says, let's say Levi was selling this field. Levi is the muhsak, he has the field. He's not selling the field to Reuven, but he's selling the field to another man on the other side, and he sells him the field, and he marks the boundaries of the field he's selling, and he writes, and he marks the boundaries of this field, and he says that this field is that he's selling is one of the boundary fields, and he says. And this other person signs on it, and he doesn't make an objection to it. Basically, he says, I'm selling this field to you, and this is, I'm selling one field to you, and this other field, which is your field, is one of the boundary fields. And this other person doesn't object. Then we say under those circumstances, Ibed es so he lost his right. Hold on. So basically, Levi sells the field to, let's say, Yehuda, and he marks, and the field he sells is not the one that Reuven is making a claim against, but when he sells the field, he marks off a different field as one of his boundary fields. And now Reuven, who had signed on the document, says, well, that's even though I signed it, it's actually my field. He lost his rights there. Amar Abaye, so says the Gemara, Hoshanu Ela Abe. When do we say that the Chacham say he lost his rights? If he was the witness of Al-Dayan, but if he was the judge, it means here like a notary. If he was certifying the signatures, so he hasn't lost his rights. The judge, the notary, can then come back and say, actually, it's my field. The Tani Rebbe Chia, that when the witnesses sign on the contract, only if they read it, a notary doesn't necessarily know what's in the contract. He'll sign off on anything. And so therefore, he's just testifying that that's your signature. So therefore, he hasn't lost his rights. Now we're on top of 109b. Also similar acher, let's say when he sells this field to somebody else, let's say Levi sells a field, he marks off one of his fields as the boundary, then the witness lost his rights. When does he say he lost his rights? But if Levi was selling it to Reuven and he marks it off as a boundary, and then Reuven comes back and says, actually, that was my field, why? He hasn't lost his rights. He said, at least I wanted to get this field first. So otherwise, if I would have made a complaint, he wouldn't have sold it to me. What could I have done? You should say that if you wanted me to tell somebody else what was going on, he never would have sold to me because if the word would have got back to him, everybody's got a friend. The friend will tell a friend, friend tell a friend. They said, oh, I'm not going to sell you anything now. So the only way I could get this field was if I would say, oh, yeah, I accept this other field is yours. But now I really don't believe that. Who does a similar acher? So somebody made a sign, somebody made this as a boundary field, and then irer vishachiv. And then after this other person, so Levi sold the field to, let's say, Yehuda, and then he made Reuven's, or this other field which Reuven signed off on as a boundary field to that sale. But now after the field was sold, Reuven made the complaint for Shachiv. But now Reuven died. So he has an executor for Reuven's estate. The executor presses Reuven's claim in front of Abaye. He says, so Abaye says, I might also similar. He says, well, if he sold this field to somebody else and he made this the boundary field, he lost his rights. That's what our Mishnah says. So the executor says, Amar Iyava Avu and the Yasmikayim. So the executor said, if the father of these orphans was alive, meaning the person who died, let's say Reuven, if he was alive, I would make the claim. Amar, tell him, Echad asiti lecha. He said, no, I wasn't giving you the whole field. When I said that this field was a boundary field, I just meant the edge of that field, the first row of wheat of that field, not the whole field, just the telem echad, a furrow. One furrow was all I was giving you, not the whole field. So Abaye said this. I'm always shaber kamras. He says, oh, that's a good argument. So he said, fine. So Abaye said, fine. You have a good argument. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan said, if you make the claim, listen, when it was the boundary, it was just that one strip, not the whole field. But give him that one strip at least. But the executive didn't want to do that either. He says, there was on that one strip, there were some palm trees which were connected, so they were worth a lot of money. The executor said, listen, this guy went to Harvard Law School. He knew what he was doing. Right? He said, you can know what you're doing even if you didn't go to Harvard. I'm saying this guy was a Sharpie. He said, he said, if the executor was, if the father of the orphans was around, he could have made a claim. What would his claim have been? He could have made the claim. He would have said, I bought it back from him afterwards. I went and I bought it back. Rashi says, after I made it as a mark, I went back and I bought it from him. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Imtam Amar Chazarti V'Kachti Mimenu Neman. He's believed. If he goes back and repurchases it from him after that fact, he's believed. Why? We'll read the Rashi. This reminds us of our old friend back from 4 months ago, the beginning of Kesubos, because we have the concept of Pasha Aser or Pasha Hater. He's the mouth that prohibited it. He's going to be the same mouth that allows it. Why? He has witnesses that it was his. And it was stolen. It was as tell him. The only reason why this guy it can be trusted to say that this was his faro is from his mouth. So he's the one who says it was sold, but now I said I bought it back. So he's the same concept of a pasha aser or a pasha itir. And so therefore I'm allowed to get it back. So Abaye says, I like your argument. He says, hire this guy to represent your estate. That's what Abaye says. If somebody has to appoint an executor, do it like this one. Okay, so now we have a classic Gemara, beautiful Gemara, which you might remember from Yevamos, a starka Gemara, so Geshmak. So the Gemara says, Misha Alach Medina Sayam. Somebody goes overseas. Says the Mishnah, the Ibda Derech Sadeo. He had a field that was surrounded by 4 fields, but he obviously had an easement how to get to his field. He had to have an easement to get to his field. He was working his field, but now he goes overseas. Suddenly the easement disappeared. Admon Omer Admon said, we force the owners of the 4 fields, we force the one to give him the shortest possible path until he gets the path to get to it. No, he's got to buy an easement now. Buy it, either pay an exorbitant price or let him go fly a kite, basically. So the Gemara says, my time at the Rabbanan, Shapir Kamar Amon. Why? What's the reasoning that the rabbis say? What's the reasoning? What's the reasoning for the Rabbanan? The Admon is saying good. Why? Why is Admon saying good? Rashi explains, because the assumption is that the 4 fields around it belong to one person. So clearly he had an easement and one of those through one of those fields. So give him the easement. So that's the assumption of why the law is, why Admon is saying good, because I have a path here and it's again, the claim is against one person. So that's why Shabir Kamar Admon. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Kudon Shikufu Arba B'nei Adam. The Rabbanan are talking about, no, there's 4 different people. Each one could push the guy off and say, no, it's your problem, it's your problem, it's your problem. They are Baruch Hoseh from the 4 different directions. So therefore, each one could say it wasn't with me, it was with you, the easement. Well, Yachim, my time of the Admon. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, well, why does Admon say one of them has to give him a path? Each one could say it's not my problem. So now we go, here we go. If the 4 people bought this field from 4 different people, or even if the 4 people bought it from one person, everybody could say, they could push them away and say, listen, it's not my problem. Either you pay us the exorbitant amount or go fly a kite. Where is I'm going to argue with the rabbis? But one guy now has all the 4 fields that surround this person's field, but he bought it from 4 different people. Amon says, I don't care. You bought the fields. I don't care who you bought it. Right now, you own all those 4 fields. For sure, one of those fields contains my easement. The Rabbanan say, Isha tak shatak, that he could say to him, listen, you want to be quiet? Be quiet. And the Rabbanan could say, if you want to be quiet, quiet. Otherwise, I'll return all these 4 fields to these 4 different people, and then you have no claim. By the way, it's in the Chokas Rishonim. Do they have to actually return it? Or do they just say, I could return it? And because I could return it, you have no claim. Meaning to say, could they just argue that? So that's the dispute between Admon and the Chachamim, and here we see that Allah is like the Chachamim, because we don't say Rabbi Gamliel Roani is Divrei Admon. So Allah is like the Chachamim, that the guy has to either pay 100, exorbitant price or go fly a kite. So this is the case. The guy says Tikkel Abrak. Before he died, he said, My daughter gets a palm tree. Also, you asked me, so the orphans went up and divided up the estate. Well, Yavu Dikla, but they didn't give her a palm tree. Each one kept saying, "This was you have to give the palm tree. You have to give the palm tree. No, you have to give the palm tree." So Savar of Yosef or Maimer, Rav Yosef thought to say, "Ainu mas nisin." This is Taka our Mishnah that the Chachamim say go fly a kite. So too here also. I'm like Abai says the two cases are not the same. Midami. Hasam kochad v'chad matzi matchuay. There, in the case of the easement, each one could say, you go to him, it's not connected to me. But but here, they all had the palm trees at the beginning. So my takantaya, what do they have to do? Give her a palm tree, and then go back and redivide up the estate from the beginning. So give her. It's not like the case of the Mishnah.
No, it could be like the case of the Mishnah if it was owned by one person from the beginning. Right?
No, if it was owned by one person from the beginning.
You had 4 fields owned by one person, so you know there was that person's, someplace on that person's property. There's no one to deflect against.
But then he sold it. But then he sold it. Obviously, if it's one person, there's nobody arguing. It's the case. But here, it was if the claim was made against that one person before he divided up the field. So here, the claim was made against the estate before they divided it up. That's the issue. That's the distinction. Somebody says, my daughter's getting this palm tree. He died, and then he left behind the palm trees, but in one case, he also had 2 halves of a palm tree. Yosef Rav Ashi with Kashamoi. So Rav Ashi was sitting, says, I don't know what to say here. It's difficult. Whoa. Do people call 2 halves of a palm or not? I'm going to Mordechai Rav Ashi. Yeah, they do. They call 2 halves of a palm tree a palm. Okay, we're going to have to go. We have a few more minutes, and I want to go on because the next few days, the Gemara is a very beautiful, but a very, very long dapim, So we have a few minutes. We'll go on a little bit more. A lot of beautiful, powerful Agadata about the land of Israel coming up. A lot of powerful Agadata about whether it's a mitzvah to move to the land of Israel. So let's say somebody takes out a note that his friend owes him money. Says, yeah. How could you say I owe you $1 million? How could I owe you $1 million when I have evidence that you sold me this field after that I sold you this field? So if I owed you $1 million, that if I owed you $1 million, why would you sell me your field to get the $1 million to get another you should have just taken the $1 million from me as part of the debt. He said, if I really owed you the field, if I really owed you the money, you should have taken the money when you sold me the field. He said, no. He was smart for doing it this way. He said he was very smart because he sold him the real estate because he thought that he'll sell his movable assets and then he'll say I have no place to collect the debt, and so therefore he sold him the field, and now I can use the field as a collateral or as a mortgage to get my note from you, so that you can't hide your assets anymore. So that's what Anmon says. So that's what the Chum say. Why?
Because he's already owed money.
Yeah, but now he's worried he's going to hide his assets. So he says, I want to make sure that you have the asset in a way that your assets in a way you can't hide it anymore. So that's why I sold this to you. But I know I'm going to get back the money, $1 million, and now it's collateralized.
So he's just using as collateral an asset that he had in his possession to begin with.
Yeah, but he's saying if I would come to him straight out and say I want your $1 million, my $1 million, the guy would never give it to me. he would say, you have nothing to claim it for me because I have no security. So now I sold you something. So now you have security. Now I can go press my claim against you for my money.
To the extent of that field.
Yeah, well, I sold him $1 million field. It's the
Right,
PK.
Gets the money for the field and then he collects back.
Yeah. So the Gemara says, my time the Rabbanon, what's the reason why the Rabbanon say we do this? Shaper Kamar Amon. Isn't Amon speaking correctly? Gemara says, Ba'asri diyavi zuzi ba'adar kasev shtara kol yamu pligi dematzi yamu ayachal pro et shachak shemachartli asasade. In a place where first he gives the money and then he writes the contract, everybody could say, like Bill was saying, you should have just kept the money. But Ba'asri the ksivi
Kept the field.
yeah, kept the field because first you got the money and he said, okay, I'm not going to write the contract. I got my field, I got my money back. But we're talking about a place. First you write the sale, the deed of the sale, and then he gives him the money for the sale. Amon says he should have told somebody in the beginning, I'm only writing this contract because the only way I can get my money back. It's like he said, no, Rabbanan says he's afraid it's going to get out. Okay, so we'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address it.